Welcome to the Views from the World Tree podcast. On today's episode, our first ever, we have some basic introductions and icebreaker type questions to help you, our listeners, get to know a little bit about us. And now, on with the episode.
Hi, welcome to episode 0 for Views of the World Tree. I'm Stephen. I'm currently working education, working towards a degree in wildlife biology, because I love to get outside. In fact, I love hiking, camping, the occasional long walk on the beach. And now, we'll let our other host introduce himself.
Thanks, Stephen. So my name is Adam. Originally, I'm from Utah. I now live in Idaho. I am married. I have 2 kids from a previous marriage. They live with their mother. I also have a 2-year-old border collie. I went to school for computer science, electrical engineering, did Air Force ROTC, spent a little time in the reserve, and for the last 10 years, I've been working as a software engineer in the semiconductor industry. I also love all things outdoors, hunting, fishing, camping, bushcrafting, and wilderness exploration. Since this is the first episode that we're recording on this podcast, we figured it would be nice if you, as the listeners, had a chance to get to know a little about us. So I'll throw it to Stephen for the first question.
Thanks, Adam. In your intro, you mentioned that you were a software engineer. Now, software engineering and outdoorsmanship do not tend to go together. How did you become such an avid outdoorsman?
Well, that's a bit of a long story, but I guess the TLDR would be that it's a combination of my small town roots, a love for the outdoors, and an analytical, engineering focused mind from an early age. Ever since I was a little kid, I always loved taking things apart to see how they worked. Everything from toys when I was young to electronics, cars, mountain bikes when I was a teenager. I've just always had this drive to understand how things work. And I think I gravitated towards computers and electronics because when I was growing up, they were new and cool. I mean, most homes when we were kids didn't have a computer, or if they did, it wasn't connected to the internet. In fact, I remember my first computer was an Apple IIe with the monochrome green screen and the 5 1/4 floppy drives. And if I was playing games, you'd have to put in a new disc every 20 minutes. That's just how it was. And then later, there was a popular video game that I know you are familiar with, and some of our listeners probably are, called StarCraft. And I don't know if that was the original internet multiplayer game, or if games like Ultima and RuneScape came first. I don't really remember. But I do remember that StarCraft was super popular with my friends. And I didn't have a computer capable of running it. So I got an old compact Presario that wasn't working, and I fixed it up so that I could play StarCraft with my friends. And while all of this was going on, growing up with computers and video games, something to keep in mind for our listeners is this was happening in tandem with stereotypical small town life. My town was tiny. In fact, I remember when I was really young, I remember our town getting its second stoplight installed. That's how small it was. So my family and I, we grew up working hard during the week, hunting and fishing on the weekends. And in some ways, hunting was a way of livelihood. My dad, my grandpa, and my uncles would all get together and get tags or permits for elk. And that would be a big source of our meat for the year. Also, when I was younger, my siblings and I were expected to work during the summers since we were out of school. And we had a choice. We could either work by doing chores at home, or we could get a job and earn money for ourselves. So my first job was a paper route, but after that, I got a job working on a ranch of a family friend, and that's what I did for multiple summers. Anyway, I guess that's a weird roundabout way of answering your question. But again, I think it just comes back to the combination of small town roots, love for the outdoors, and just that drive to find out how things work.
I think that's perfect. Um, yeah, I was nodding with you. I'm a little bit older, not by much. So I remember going to network parties and playing Warcraft in one of my buddy's basements because his dad was in computer networking. And so we got to play the original DOS Warcraft orcs versus humans with a LAN party of 6 or 7 computers tied together before the internet became a thing that everybody had. And I thought that was the coolest thing ever. But so I'll say my first multiplayer game was Warcraft, but not StarCraft. But I think that's all right.
Yeah, it was nice, good, simpler times. All right. So my question for you, sir, what D&D class and alignment most accurately describes you?
Oh, that's hard. Um, Little known fact, I am a game master for a pretty large group of players. So I play every alignment with all my NPCs. But looking at my life and the choices that I've made, I would have to say lawful neutral. Um, I don't like people in authority for the most part. I think they're corrupt jerks, and I don't want to get too conspiracy theorist, but think that I think that people in power will always strive to maintain that power. Um, but I also have a fear of punishment, and so I'm definitely lawful. I follow the rules of the law, but I definitely consider myself a free thinker, and I think that's where the neutral comes in. So not as well thought out of an answer as yours, but it is what it is.
That was good.
Um, yeah, I really like your D&D class question, so I'm gonna have to ask, what would your D&D alignment, and I'm gonna add class to that.
Okay. Um, so if we're talking, and I don't have the D&D experience that you do, but if we're talking standard classes, I'd have to go with a ranger. Um, but if we're going into some of the expanded classes, then I think the artificer is really interesting. Um, so maybe some type of hybrid. I've always been kind of a lone wolf, and some of my fondest memories are from hunting and fishing trips. And I remember when you and I were younger, we would spend hours in the summers exploring the river bottoms near our grandma's house. And even today, I still love to go exploring in wilderness areas whenever I can. But then the artificer, because I like tinkering with electronics and machinery, working on engines and computers is something I've always enjoyed. So it's hard to pick just one.
I hear you. I'm surprised we didn't both die from Lyme disease from swimming in that darn creek. But
As far as alignment, it kind of depends on the situation. And I don't know, it might be kind of cliche, but most of the time I try to lean towards true neutral. Um, in some cases, though, a little bit more chaotic neutral. Like you, I don't believe in following those in power just because. I think that some rules are good, but we shouldn't follow rules just because they're there. And at the same time, I don't feel compelled to break the rules unless I have a good reason. Um, so I guess for me, it just comes back that my loyalty is to myself and my family and those close to me, and not to society or governments as a whole. And then where the chaotic comes in is just I have a natural distrust and bit of a disrespect for authority. So I like the flexibility to adapt to situations as I need to.
Cool. Perfect.
All right, Steve, my next question for you. Imagine that we lived in the world of, for example, Fahrenheit 451, and all books, art, music, and etc. are illegal and are to be destroyed on sight. What one book would you choose to save and why?
This has got to be one of the hardest questions. At the beginning of the week, when we went over the show notes, I was thinking one way. By the middle of the week, I was thinking a different way. And now that you have finally asked the question, I'm thinking a third way. So, um, my gut reaction would be to be either The Hobbit or the Lord of the Rings trilogy, just because there's so much in those books, so much adventure, so much takeaway, so much excitement that I feel like I could read and reread, which I have, and never get bored of them. So that's where I'm at right now, especially The Hobbit. There's just something nice about that story of a homebody that jumps on a trail and walks to adventure and ends up loving it, despite always being told that the people of the Shire don't go on adventures and it's just not what we do. And so I really love the story and the message of that book. I probably read into that book a little bit different than a lot of people do, but you know. The other two books that I was thinking of, like I was thinking of, I can't remember the name of the trilogy now, but it's by Piers Brown. It's called Red Rising, I think, which is kind of Game of Thrones meets a sci-fi saga, which I really enjoyed because of the story, but I don't know that I could reread it again. And then the book that I initially thought was something religious based, but no. Um, we'll get into that later, but just no. So I'm going to stick with The Hobbit or Lord of the Rings.
Those are honestly, those would probably be my answers as well. I'd read that series once a year religiously. It's a great answer. I like it.
Well, now that you're mentioning it, I'm starting to think the Harry Potter 8 book series, but you said one book, so I'm going to stay with The Hobbit. um, I guess since you answered that question, I can't ask you the same question. So let's go. If you had unlimited funds, we all want unlimited funds, where would you choose to set up a homestead or like a forever vacation home? What mountains, beach, warm, cool, lake, river? What's your dream homestead location?
That's a good question, and it's not one I need to think about a lot because I it's something I've already thought about. Mountain Lake, without question. Somewhere up in the pine trees, somewhere that gets all four seasons, but fairly mild summers and winters. I tend to like cold weather more than warm weather because I feel like you can always build a fire or put more clothes on. And growing up in the desert of Utah, heat sucks. There's no way around it sometimes. But yeah, mountain lake somewhere with fish and animals to to live off of. Maybe a mountain meadow near a lake, somewhere that you could plant a few crops. I guess that would be my answer.
I like it.
All right, I'm going to pull a same question. What's your ideal homestead location? But I'm going to throw a twist. Assuming that you still have to work for a living, but maybe you can work from home remotely. So, your ideal homestead location, number one. Number two, you still have to work for a living. And number three, it can't really be in the middle of nowhere unless you have a plan for like farming or, you know.
Okay. The loops, the limits on it, that does change because I would love to live like in the middle of the Yukon in Alaska, where I my nearest neighbor was 50 kilometers away. That would be awesome, but we can't do that. So, um, like you, I love the mountains. My wife loves the ocean, so we'd have to have both mountains and ocean, which kind of takes me to think either like the Scottish coastline or possibly New Zealand. And I would go probably Scottish coastline. I feel like it's remote enough, um, yet close enough to civilization that I could get groceries and whatnot. So that would be my ideal homestead in the Scottish Highlands.
I like it. I've always loved the Isle of Skye. I want to go there someday.
Yeah, that would be fun. Um, we're gonna kind of throw a curveball at you. Um, I'm a little bit of a comic book nerd. Well, I don't read the comic books, but I like comic book movies. So I'm gonna throw, if you had any superpower, what would it be, and why would you choose that one?
Um, okay, so the Slytherin in me wants to go for like the most OP, powerful, destroy my enemies type of power. But I think more realistically, if you can be realistic about a question like this, right? Because we're talking superpowers here.
Fair.
But I think time travel would be a really cool ability. Um, as for why, I mean, depending on which theory of time travel you subscribe to, maybe you can affect historical events, maybe you can't. But either way, one of my favorite TV shows has always been Doctor Who. And so I think it would just be so cool and so fun to be able to travel around in a blue police box and see, all of the interesting times throughout history, see where civilization goes, all of that. So I'm going to say time travel.
That's a superpower that I didn't even think of when I thought of this question. I like it though. And anybody that can throw down a Doctor Who reference is A-OK.
All right. Question for you. So imagine that it's now 2025 and the zombie apocalypse has come, just like we've seen in movies. Assuming that you and your wife are safe, choose three other people or couples or families, whatever, that you would try and recruit to join you guys in order to give you the best odds of survival.
Um, I'm not a big fan of zombie movies. I would definitely grab uh, you and your wife, mostly because you just rebuilt that Bronco that I know would be an awesome bug out vehicle, like, period. Um, Other two, uh, Woody Harrelson and Bill Murray, because Zombieland was the best movie I ever watched.
There you go. I like it.
I mean, I don't know. I haven't thought too much about it, but
Well, I stock up on the Twinkies, and I'm sure he'd be happy to join the team.
there you go. I mean, Bill Murray had the best disguise, just dressed like a zombie and he won't be bothered, right?
There you go.
All right. I do like the zombie apocalypse one. I'm not going to make you name three, and I know I kind of threw that question away, but not including me or my wife, assuming that you'd add us, tr- at least one person that you'd choose for zombie apocalypse.
One person. Okay, I would go with, and I don't know if you're even going to know who this is. There's a guy with a YouTube channel called The Wooded Beardsman. He's up in Canada and he does like survival challenges, bushcrafting, living off the land. So he'll go, that's his whole YouTube channel is he'll go out in the woods by himself for, like 30 days at a time and just survive. And I feel like that would be an excellent resource to have on our side. And also, he's funny. I love watching his videos. So, not a sponsor.
I have not heard of that, but I'm definitely going to check one out. Check out one of his videos as soon as we stop recording this. Um, I'm going to answer it more seriously now, just with the one. Before Bear Grylls, there was a guy that did a show called Survivor Man, and he used to film himself, kind of similar to what you were talking about, but a syndicated show. So I don't know if that makes him real or fake or whatever. But I can't remember his name, but he would be pretty awesome. He did a documentary on bears in Alaska, and anybody that can get within 10 feet of a Kodiak brown bear and not back down, I think has the nerves of steel to survive a situation like that.
Yeah, agreed. I've seen that show. I think the guy's name was Les something.
Oh, yeah. It is less something. I'm going to have to look it up now.
Les Survivor Man.
Yeah.
All right. While you're looking that up, let me go to our next question here. If you could go back in time and spend 1 hour with your 17-year-old self, what are three things that you would tell yourself?
Um, that would be hard. Before I answer that, his name was Les Stroud.
That's right.
Okay. Three things I would tell my 17-year-old self. The first thing I would tell myself is it's okay to make your own decisions. Um, that comes from not really making up my mind on what I wanted to do for school until I was probably about 28. And at that point, trying to find time, money, energy to go to school has been really hard. And I kept doing what people wanted me to do rather than what I wanted to do myself, and that made it really hard. Second thing, if something hurts, go to the doctor. Don't man up because arthritis later on in life, especially, I'm not 40 yet and I've got arthritis because I was too darn proud to go get things looked at. And number three kind of relates to number one. Just because other people are doing it and they're cool does not mean what they're doing is cool. So those are my three things.
Nice. I like it. Very deep and philosophical.
Well, I'm a thinker. I tell you what. um, I am curious what your answer to those three things are, but
All right.
yeah.
Um, so mine, I'm gonna first of all we'll just get it out of the way. I'll pull the Biff Tannen and say something like invest in Apple.
I think you'd have to.
Right? You got the opportunity, you got to set yourself up for success. But, um, and I'm not as deep a thinker, but trying to get a little bit more serious for a minute, I would say, yeah, just like don't be afraid to do your own thing and think for yourself. Um, like I grew up extremely conservatively in a very conservative household, and while I would not fault my parents for anything that, you know, happened growing up, I love them more than anybody on this earth, and they have been nothing but kind to me. There are experiences and ideals that were part of that upbringing that I feel like I've had to overcome. So that would be the second thing is take advice from people, take advice from your family and your elders, but ultimately think for yourself and make your own decisions. Um, the third thing would be, I guess it's kind of along the same lines, but it's specific enough that I'll call it out. Live life on your own timetable. Like, don't get married when you're 21 years old just because you live in Utah and that's what everybody does, right? Live your life at the rate that you want to. Um, you know, get married when you're ready, buy a house when you're ready. Don't feel like you have to finish school, you know, before your mid 20s. It's okay to take your time. There's a book series that, I mean, other than Tolkien, is probably my favorite series. It's called The Stormlight Archive, and it's by Brandon Sanderson. And there's an order of knights in the book that have mystical abilities, and their motto is it's the journey before the destination. And I think we need to apply that same thing to life, right? It's life is about the journey. You don't need to rush to try and get to the end. So that's my three things. That's my attempt at being deep.
Yeah, you didn't attempt. You sir are a philosopher. Um, I guess I guess we're gonna go back into the past, like since we're thinking about it, right? Um, every child has this dream job, what they think is the epitome of success. For me, it was a firefighter for a while, and then an astronaut. You know your basics, and then I wanted to go on to become a rancher. So I'm going to ask you, when you were a child, what was the ultimate dream job? And I'm going to go kind of beyond. If you had an opportunity to chase that job now, would you drop everything and do it? So basically, is your dream job still your dream job?
um, no, if we're being honest, I mean, when I was a kid, yeah, that's not still my dream. When I was a kid, I really wanted to be a paleontologist. Um, I was obsessed with dinosaurs up until a much later age than I care to admit, we'll say. Part of that probably came from Jurassic Park because that came out when we were younger. But at the same time, the town that I grew up in had like one of the most famous dinosaur museums in the state. And there was a quarry within, I think, 20 minutes of driving distance. And so I went to the museum, I went to the quarry multiple times as a kid. I loved dinosaurs. I had probably 100 of those old rubber molded dinosaur toys, and I could have told you all of their names, all of their stats, facts about them. And yeah, I loved dinosaurs so much. I would, like I said, I went to the quarry. You could like go out and, you know, try and dig for fossils. But as for now, probably not. Um, while it would be fun being out in nature, at the same time, I mean, I spent all of my high school and college years in the high altitude deserts of Utah, which is where it seems like fossils are usually found. And I don't really care to spend every day out in that kind of environment anymore. Um, if I, and piggybacking off of what you said your dream job was to be a rancher, I think if I had the opportunity to follow my dream today, I would want to have a ranch somewhere. And this is totally out of left field. Maybe we'll get into it in later episodes. I want to have a ranch somewhere up in the mountains where I can farm and live off the land and train service dogs for veterans suffering from PTSD. That's my current dream.
That would be awesome. I'm gonna ask more about that probably in a future episode.
Fair enough.
But I do want to, as you were talking about paleontology, I remember. So our grandparents owned a pretty sizable um, piece of land down in Utah, and in the middle of this land, there was this hill, and up towards the top of the hill, the oil shell had pushed through. And I remember Adam and we used to go up there, crawl up there, and dig out this oil shell and pretend like we were digging fossils, dinosaur eggs, everything. Like we thought we were the coolest, on the brink of discovery. And looking back, some of the best memories I have are playing up on that hill, digging out the oil shell. And some of the most painful memories I have are jumping off that cliff thinking that we were invincible. So, uh, anyway, I just had to throw that out there. It just brought back awesome memories.
That was good times.
Well, that brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. We are looking at recording the next episode within the next couple of weeks. Look out on our socials for when we announce that. You can find our socials: Instagram at Views from the Real Tree, TikTok at Views from the Real Tree. We have a Facebook page that nobody follows yet, so we won't announce there. Anyway, thanks again. Goodbye.
Be well.